So first, I would like to call upon Daksh Sharma, Managing Partner, TravHQ. Daksh, I almost saw you here somewhere. Okay, proceeding, Daniel Craig. There, Daksh is here. Okay. Mr. Daniel Craig, President of RTM Taiwan. So may we have you on the stage right now? We have General Manager, Lonely Planet India, Seshadri. Can we please have you on the stage? Thank you. Bhawna Grover, I'm hoping is here. Well, there she is. Head of Content, GoIbibo. And of course, we are expecting our last, sorry, is he even coming? Our last panelist is who?
Abraham. Mr. Abraham.
Okay, sure. Yeah, and we are expecting Mr. Abraham Alapatt from Thomas Cook to join us soon. So over to you guys. I am looking forward to this session. I'm sure our audience are. So let's begin. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Pleasure to be here again, day 2, and what a fantastic influencer marketing panel we had. So before we begin, can I just request, the people who would love to who are standing behind, take the seats. There are plenty of seats in the front. I think this is going to be a cracking discussion. Next 35-40 minutes is all about content. Sharanya, as well as my friends who are standing over here, Hitesh, if you can just take the seats. All right, so we are going to begin the panel. One of the panelists is going to join in as and when we are talking. But largely the discussion is about the fuel or the gasoline of the industry, as they say, right? So this is about content. I have a wonderful lineup of panelists with me. Sesh represents Lonely Planet, Bhawna is from GoIbibo, and my friend Daniel is actually from Taiwan, runs what we call as RTM, which is the Redefine tourism mixer. Once again, I just request all my friends to take their seats. So broadly, what you're going to talk today is essentially a four-pronged approach. We're going to talk about the evolution of content marketing. That's the first thing. We are also going to talk about storytelling in terms of how content is. We're also going to look at content in terms of the impact it has on purchase, which is the transaction side. And the fourth thing, which is what you're doing very beautifully at GoIbibo, is the entire community piece. How does it impact reviews? How does it actually impact post-purchase or even pre-purchase when people are looking at it? So I'm going to make it very interactive. Feel free to shoot in questions as and when you have. So we'll make it as interactive as we can. Let's start with the first point, which is how content has evolved. We have travel content in social media, but travel per se in terms of content has always been there, right? Earlier it was print-based content, but now we're talking about digital content. So let's get started with you, Sesh.
Okay, I think for me it's become an interestingly a fancy word nowadays. Content is always there to consume, and I don't know why people talk about content marketing as a very fancy stuff. Because in the past people produced catalogs or posters or some kind of an information system to market themselves. But today, if you look at the matrix, I talk about two things, right? One is the content. I keep saying this in every conference, so some of you heard me before might get worried about why he's repeating it, because it's so important that there is a container issue as well, because the container keeps changing while the content by and large remains the same. And then we now have content evolving into different formats, not just print, but it's going into all kinds of, I just thought I'll look at the list and I said no. I mean, it's running into various specializations within the content. It's just not mere content. You have destination video, which is different from what the previous session talks about, influencer video. They can be completely different. So the specialization in the content evolution, in my opinion, is getting more finer, more deeper, and how we are going to catch up with that, that kind of a change is something that we all must be discussing and brainstorming to see how that new evolution in terms of content is going to help travel.
Over to you, Bhawna.
So, the evolution of content, I think, has been enormous, especially in the last 5 to 10 years. And I remember when I was a journalist back in 2005, the only way, people could access news was either newspapers or magazines, or it was a bunch of news channels. But even today, I get a newspaper at home, but the only thing I reach out the newspaper for is probably to read my horoscope, because that's fun for me. So I just feel that, why should I look at the newspaper for news? I mean, no offense to people who read newspapers early in the morning with their cup of tea. But, I just feel that I have adapted to technology probably faster or in a better way than others. So why should I reach to the newspaper to read news that happened yesterday when I have access to things that happened just 2 minutes ago? So that's the kind of evolution that we are seeing. And throughout my professional career, I think I have mostly worked on traditional forms of content, whether it was for the print media, whether it was writing blogs or travel guides or anything. But when I joined GoIbibo, it was my first stint with user-generated content. So whether it's videos or whether it's Facebook Live, whether it's stories on Instagram and WhatsApp. And it's very funny that my parents or my older relatives, they are making and producing and consuming user-generated content more than I am. So that's the kind of evolution that we are going to look at, and as we move on, I'm going to focus more on user-generated content.
And Daniel, you kind of represent not just Taiwan, but in terms of what is happening with the Chinese travelers, and a lot of what both Bhawna and Sesh talked about. Would you sort of agree or disagree in terms of how content has evolved in terms of how people are traveling in your part of the world?
Well, actually, I think the world content marketing evolution goes at a similar path. In Taiwan, before 2000, there are authorities everywhere, traditional media, TV, magazine, and those reporters that are the limited channels to create contents. And after 2000, because of technologies and online developments, more people coming into the UGC platform, user-generated content platform. So UGC becomes the main channel to create contents and deliver information for about 10 years. And then after 2010, because of Facebook, because of the Instagram and all the social media platform, okay, there are a complicated ways of doing content marketing, which is composed of authority traditional media, influencers, we call it KOL, key opinion leaders online, and there are UGC at the same time. So it becomes very complicated content marketing generation after 2010. So at this moment, what I would define the stage of content marketing will really depend on what is your target audience and what is your age, what is your profile. Different group, different fragments target audience will absorb information from different channels. So this is a highly fragmented and highly scattered around world that content marketing becomes something that's really complicated and really challenging in Eastern world.
And before I get to Sesh, you had some points to add. So quickly, just wanted to check with you. You were talking about Taiwan sort of representing both Eastern and Western world in terms of the cultural influence. So when it comes to East versus West, and when you look at content per se, what is more prevalent in Taiwan?
What is more popular, right? Okay. For content marketing in Taiwan, because it's a very mature travel consumer markets, so people do not trust those packaged contents, those design contents, because they are too beautiful, they are too good to be true. So at this moment, people love to see the true stories. The true stories might not be good, for the product or for the brand. It might not be all that perfect. It might be negative, or telling some negative experiences or bad experiences. But because of those true stories, people feel more intended to trust the brand. while they know there might be some flaws and mistakes, but they still can accept it. And at that moment, the content becomes more like complete. And now consumers in Taiwan especially embrace this kind of complete content with bad and good sides at the same time.
Yeah, so I just, talking from experience, particularly for brands who wants to get into content marketing, most of them rely on external information. We would recommend, even if you're going to do it in a small way, do some original research that is very relevant to your brand in order to understand what kind of a content marketing that can be carried out. Do a case study where you accept what your failures have been and what your success have been. You just can't ignore the fact that you also failed in some areas, right? It's better to call at an early stage to say, okay, I need to buck up here because I've gone wrong. So content marketing definitely requires constant introspection in terms of where you're doing right and where you're doing wrong. Also, look at some industry friends or industry brands within your own community to see what others. There's nothing wrong in learning from best practices. I mean, it's not going to be considered as plagiarism. It's definitely going to be something that you're learning from what other people do. I mean, that's how education happened, right? Somebody passed on knowledge to A to B to C, and that's not considered plagiarism. It's about sharing of knowledge and best practices. And finally, I think all of us realize that data and analyticals of data has become such an important element in today's world that you have to ultimately look at your data to see how your content is performed or otherwise.
Let's actually take a deep dive more on the story side of things. Our industry, whether you talk about staying in hotels or you probably look at going to a destination, it's all about storytelling, right? So how deep and how meaningful these stories are at the end of the day plays a big role on the actual experience of the traveler. So if I'm looking at booking my stay in a hotel, at the end of the day, what story I have heard about the hotel in terms of the experience of a traveler is what is really going to have a deep impact in my mind when I'm actually going to make the booking. Now, when it comes to the travel industry, whether you're a destination, whether you're a hotel, how as a brand can you tell better stories? And maybe I think we start with Bhawna because you're beautifully sort of telling stories when it comes to hotels, right?
Okay. So, I think all of us sitting here are very privileged because we are part of the travel industry, and it's very easy for us to sort of, inspire our audience or our customers with our travel stories, right? So, before I was with GoIbibo, I was working for this real estate company. And trust me, it was very, very boring and very, very difficult for me to write content that could actually, inspire my customers, right? Imagine reading a blog on top 5 things you should consider before buying cement. I mean, who would want to read that? So I think it's very, very easy for us to sort of pass on our travel experiences to our customers. So at GoIbibo, we focus a lot on user-generated content. And when I joined the company, I was told that we are not going to do regular blogs. We are not going to work on the travel guides. We are getting rid of the hotel descriptions at all, like completely. And I was really amazed, and I told my CEO that, why am I being hired here? What am I supposed to do when we are not going to do all the traditional content that I've been doing?
Maybe your CEO knew that for Travel Guys, Lonely Planet is there.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. But I think he was very clear with his opinion when he said that, when you share a story or you write a blog on, top 10 things you should do when you're visiting New York without having visiting the place and sitting in a Gurgaon office, do you think that is going to make an impact and inspire your customers to, buy or book travel? As against, hundreds and thousands of people writing real and unique stories after having visited New York or staying there or as locals or as people who know know about New York. And that actually made sense. And this is what we've been doing. We are not doing blogs. We have travel guides, but we have Lonely Planet. So we do a lot of user-generated content, and the stories come from the customers, right? And sometimes, Daksh, it's a very scary thing also to think that, what will happen to traditional writers if, all the consumers are going to write content for us. But, that's the kind of content that we're looking at. It's unique, it's coming from authentic customers, and it has real stories. So I think people also, as audience also, we're looking at content that inspires us truly, that connects with us, that's coming from people who've actually had real experiences. And I think as we move on to the next question about community building, I'm going to share more about how reviews and ratings play a role in actually influencing the buying decision of travelers.
Daniel, any tips on creating authentic, true to heart, honest stories that brands can create and actually inspire travelers?
Okay. In Taiwan, we have these, how can I say, the principles of content creating and storytelling. Okay, there are three things. The first thing is that we will need to create something for people to show off. And the second thing, we need to create something for people to imitate. And the third thing, we need to create something for people to feel empathic. Okay, so show off, imitate, and feel sympathy, empathy is the three golden principles for the storytellers in Taiwan to make it success. So let me raise an example. There is this online game, very famous in Chinese region, and there are a lot of campaigns and advertisements on YouTube and all the channels. Their slogan is that all your classmates, all your friends, all your families are playing the game. You don't want to play that game? So this is like the peer pressure for the people who watch the video and watch the advertisement, feel like he needs to play the game as well. So when his friends or families play the game and tell him that how fun is the game, that becomes a show-off pressure. And while he wants to be like his friends and families, that's an imitation pressure. While everybody feel the same fun and enjoyable, that becomes the sympathy pressure. So composing these factors together, that becomes the principle for storytelling, and it really works in every kind of marketing, content marketing campaigns in Taiwan.
Stories do matter, right? You've been telling stories since in eternity.
Yeah, so I would say, I heard somebody saying this, a very powerful statement, which I thought from my perspective. They said that you listen to cinema more than you watch. For me, it was a very powerful statement because I think we are probably following the words more in a cinema than think about what the context is. So I may be a different kind of thought process here, because when you talk of story, obviously think of whether it's fiction or non-fiction. So whether it's true or untrue. Also, when you think of a story, I think all of us have gone through an education system where the teacher always comes to the school in the morning and say, let me tell you a story, and the whole class goes, another story from the teacher, right? I think we probably need to not use the word there in travel. At least can we say sharing experiences rather than stories? Because stories, I'm not sure it really is a powerful word in the travel segment. So I did some homework, and there are two things that I saw. One was the World Hum. It's spelled world as in world, hum as in HUM. It's an interesting site where there's a lot of travel stories, and obviously when you look at it, you will make an opinion on what you like or what you don't like. I also read a book maybe a year ago, which was about, I would recommend, the title is My Kind of Place, Travel Stories from a Woman Who Has Been Everywhere. Very interesting, because you see destinations which you might not have heard of, and how this person is able to share the experiences. I'm deliberately not using the word stories. sharing the experiences of such travel, and obviously try and read that book, you get some idea of sharing experiences, stroke storytelling versus travel.
And the other thing that we have when it comes to content, I broadly sort of define content in terms of two layers. One is the inspirational piece, where you're actually inspiring somebody to travel to a destination, probably make a booking. And the other thing is, which is a transactional piece, and which is actually the next point. So when it comes to transaction, how do you actually, create content which is either pre-transaction or post-transaction? Are people serious about that side of the content where somebody has actually made a booking and is sharing his experience? What I do feel is a lot of brands today are obsessed with creating destinational, inspirational content, which we traditionally call as the marketing-centric content. There's not so much focus. Of course, GoIbibo is an exception. There are larger brands that are actually changing it. There's not so much focus on actually the post-purchase process and actually deeply looking at, are we really seriously engaging with the travelers, how we are actually ensuring their satisfaction is happening. So I think that's where we'd love to sort of have some thoughts from you in terms of how you are kind of changing the game over there.
So since I'm also a storyteller and I love telling stories, so there's another story here that ever since I've been working in content, I have always heard that content is a support function. So whenever there are appraisals happening, content is a support function. Whenever there are awards happening, content is a support function. So it's either tech or marketing who's always winning the game. So I was also very curious from, very earliest to know, how do we quantify content? How do we measure the impact of content? And until 3 or 4 years back, I really had no idea how do we actually, and even if we are writing inspiring content and that is leading to transactions, we wouldn't know that directly. So I think with user-generated content and reviews and ratings, we were able to do a lot to quantify the impact of the content, and we've actually seen, bookings and revenue and sales coming in through reviews and ratings. So at GoIbibo we have millions of reviews to our advantage, and we primarily focus on getting these reviews from our customers for all our verticals, whether it's hotel, whether it's bus, flight, cars, etc. So what happens is that, we've done a lot of studies, and there are other studies that have also taken place where people say that almost 80% of the travelers look at 5 to 10 reviews before making a booking. And back in the day, I don't think we would have ever considered, looking at reviews before booking a hotel. And 90%, as many as 90% travelers say that they will not book a hotel that has 0 reviews. So reviews and ratings are playing a bigger role here, whether it's domestic travel or it's international travel. People are reading reviews before making a travel decision, and even I do that. When I book a hotel, I have to look at reviews. That's
actually the first thing that we do, right?
That's the first thing that we do, and it's not just with the travel industry. I think even if you're buying something on Amazon or one of these portals, you look at reviews of the product before buying, before making a buying decision. So I think UGC is playing an enormous role in impacting and influencing the buying decision of travelers, and we actually have numbers with us that say that the sales and revenue of the company of the domestic or international bookings went from here till here. So today I feel very proud that we've been able to do that, and we can say that we even content can impact business directly. So it's not always a support function, it's not always indirectly impacting the revenue and sales of the company. So that's what we've been doing, and I'm happy that we've been able to do that.
I have some more questions on that, and before I get to Sesh, I just got the word that Abraham was also here. Simran, if you're around, okay, I just got a heads up that there is Abraham as well, but we'll probably get to that later. So I have some more questions, but before that, Sesh, you're in the content space, which is more in inspiration, less on transaction. Maybe you're not so much on user-generated reviews, but all kinds of hard questions coming from brands in terms of how do you actually measure the ROI, and what is your answer to that?
Yeah, I think this is not a good question for me particularly, because I want to tell everyone every time when they come to see me is we are not a transactional site. Our business is to tell the traveler the truth about every location. Our business is to make sure the traveler gets inspired by what we write. But still, a lot of transactional people come to us and say, because you have this huge number, if I remember, I think we were about 112 million users last year on our website. So people think it's a number where they could do some transactions. But I think I will pass this question because I don't think I'm the right person to talk on that subject.
All right, but I'm sure, like, in terms of what's happening in your part of the world, are people so obsessed about A, numbers, and B, reviews? I'm sure, like, you have the equivalent of TripAdvisor, and there's TripAdvisor as well. So how often are people, checking these reviews, and what's happening on the user-generated side of content?
Well, reviews in any kind of OTA or platform do matter a lot to people. I would say that's even more important and meaningful than influencers or authority media. So in my country, for those stores or hotels or any kind of supplier side, they will really need to manage the reviews from their clients. They pay for the people who write something good, something positive about their products. That's what happened.
All right, and then we have Abraham as well. Well, thanks for joining us. I know the traffic is pretty crazy. So let's straight away get to, right now we are actually focusing more about the user-generated content, which is actually more on reviews, and you being, what you are, representing the entire, stuff that's happening at Thomas Cook. How do you guys sort of handle, and what is your strategy for user-generated content?
I think we're focusing more on business product level, talking more about experience within our product and services. I think that automatically creates an environment for users then to talk about because creating those automatically reduce this to competitive to talk more level. I think that's really where travel is going by being driven by experience users like this. So I think that is a natural progression. And our focus completely is in that space.
And before I get back to you, and what has been your strategy towards the inspirational part? And I would have loved to ask you this question earlier, but now that you're here, we'll just take the liberty of shooting that question. Reviews sort of come in, once people have made the booking or people are in the journey phase where they've decided that I'm going to go to this place. How do you sort of inspire people to travel to a destination?
I think the good thing of the last 4-5 years for sure is that people are coming with a far more sort of clearer sense of what they want to do. Whether it's the destination itself or even more specifically what they want to do within the destination, either from word of mouth or media or searching online and so on. So I think that really helps. Then it's really about building on what they already believe or want, right, and heightening that inspiration or desire. There still are a lot of customers who come to us with pretty much a sense of I want to travel, these are my limitations if you will, and then it's up to you to sort of talk about the destinations that are either within reach or would be apt or suitable depending on the kind of people they are, right? So if you're traveling with children, then obviously you're talking of a different kind of product or range. You're talking with older people, you're creating a different kind of sort of canvas for them. So I think it really depends on where the customer is at, and you build on the sort of inspiration or desire from where they are at. Right? So you sort of grow that desire and take it right up to conclusion based on that.
I think Sesh, you also had an AV, so if you want us to play the AV right now?
Yeah, it'll be great, yeah.
So we'll check, and while we are doing that, Bhawna, do you have a system in place in terms of how do you measure this? And we were on a phone call last week, and you were talking about this being sort of a very process-oriented thing in terms of actually capturing the number of reviews, the deep impact that you have made. So if there are smaller travel agencies out here, a lot of them would want to sort of build smaller processes. So if you would want to give them a little bit of quick tip or so.
For that, I think they should come at 4 o'clock for deeper insights. But on a broader level, I'll say that since there are thousands of reviews coming in on a daily basis, it becomes very, very challenging for us to sort of put them on the front end and moderate them. Moderation is a bigger challenge for us. So which is why we are adapting to technology. There's AI and there's machine learning that we're using to automate our content so that it comes on the front end ASAP. Right? That is one thing. And we have a manual moderation team in place who is, doing a quality check so that, there's genuine content which is being featured for our consumers. And like one of us mentioned that, UGC is very fraud prone. I think you mentioned that, there are people who pay for reviews to come in. So we have a lot of checks on fraud detection so that our reviews are very, very genuine and that people look up to us. So I think technology is playing a very big role here because I think the modern traveler is obsessed with clicking pictures and posting them online. So it's becoming a bigger challenge for content marketeers or content people to sort of use that pool of visual user generated content to implement it in their strategies and to make use of it for their customers. So I think visual UGC is one thing that is going to be big in the coming couple of years or probably more than that. So AI and machine learning and chatbots, I think these are the kind of things that we need to adapt to so that we are able to, fast pace ourselves into, producing content or curating content that is useful for our audiences. And more details on what are the smaller processes at, I think, 4 or 4:30 when we have the masterclass.
And we'll probably get some more on the secret sauce on what's cooking in terms of content in GoIbibo, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so we'll quickly play the AV if we're ready. Can we have the AV? And we have lots of questions, I'm sure. So this is actually the right forum to ask any questions. We have the best people in the house. We have GoIbibo. We have a friend from Taiwan. We have Lonely Planet. And then we have Abraham from Thomas Cook. So all questions of content, we'll just shoot right after the AV.
I just wanted to show the video because it was done, I think, 50 years ago, the movie, when the social media was not existent. And you can see, even then they had realized that English is not going to be a pathway for content. The reason I want to show this is because people should start thinking about generating content beyond English. And said 50 years ago, let's say it again.
All right, so let's have time for questions. Anybody has any questions? Language doesn't matter, English, Hindi, Marathi, Kannada, any other language. This is the platform, this is the place. Any questions from our friends? Anybody who has anything to ask? Come on guys, content, this is what we are in the space. All right, do you have one hand over there?
Yeah, hi, this is Purav Shah from Kwakwa. The question is open to panelists. So, in a traditional market like India, conventionally it's a price-sensitive market and therefore there is no brand loyalty. And I believe it extends to a lot of other Asian countries. So, have you seen recently in the last 2 years conversions in terms of your content marketing giving you more results and the conversion is faster, or are there any numbers that you can share?
I think I have a challenge in the question itself because there is tradition and convention. I don't know where this comes from because I'm not going to brand India as a traditional market. It's a market which is wide open for everybody. So, can you be a little more specific on your question?
So they were interchangeable terms. Looking at conventionally the Indian buyers buy online, it's a very price sensitive market. And it also relates to a lot of other Asian destinations or Asian countries. So because of your content marketing campaigns, have you seen better conversions? And especially for, let's say, GoIbibo, have you seen better conversions, and do you have better, or even for Thomas Cook for that matter, have you seen better conversions when it comes to your content marketing campaigns?
To your question, I think clearly the more rich the content is, especially visually and with videos, pictures and videos, we've definitely seen more interest, more throughput, and definitely more conversion. To the extent that we've started, for example, using product reviews, where people who bought or used the services in the past have rated not just the components, but the overall tour or package they rate. And within our own website, today we are about 30% online, so we are a true hybrid player in that sense. We've definitely seen far greater value and conversion on the higher rated products and services. So clearly people are using other people's experiences as a point of view before taking a decision, point one. We've gone to the extent of making a fund on a business that we've invested in called Alapatt, started by a company called TravHQ, a startup in Mumbai, which really is about a very simple WhatsApp kind of interface using graphics, GUI kind of interface. And the back is entirely based on people who actually travel and their experiences, right? So the itineraries, the content that's generated is actually helping you make a decision before they buy. And so we are putting our money where our mouth is. We're not just saying content drives business, but actually investing in companies that drive content and business.
I would just like to add that we recently we did a campaign on hotels that did not have reviews at all. So these were the hotels that had 0 reviews, and we brought the reviews from 0 to say 10 reviews per hotel. And we saw a massive increase in the number of bookings. I would not be able to tell you the exact numbers, but if I were to tell you the percentage, it was over 40%. So you can see the impact, reviews and ratings have on, the buying decision of people. And we've also done certain surveys where people say that, although consumers are price conscious, but they say that they are willing to, pay higher, prices for hotels that have better reviews and ratings. So I think that answers your question. Thank
I'll
you.
just supplement it by saying there are 2 questions, right? One is it price sensitiveness or is it predatory pricing, right? You will very soon know this in the next month or so, because most of you would have read about the press note that's coming out on 1st of February, where there's a lot of new regulations on e-commerce. Now, you talked about tradition and all the attitudes. We will see the real attitudes and the real traditions in the next quarter, when the Government of India press note becomes functional.
First of all, I would like to say the positioning and the branding image of your product matter the most in the first place. Basically, for the mass tourist markets, there are 4 rules for the image, for the content marketing. First is it should be shallow, it should be cheap, it should be popular, and it should be easy. So shallow, cheap, popular, and easy are 4 rules to attract the most of the tourists in the market. However, our products diversify a lot. So in the first place, we need to find the positioning. Where is our product? If that is more high-end, more luxurious, then we need to accept the truth that your market is relatively more limited, because that's not cheap and shallow and popular and easy. So find the positioning first and know our limits, know the limits of the markets, and then the second step is to get the real people and let them to get their friends, their families as real people. So let real people get real people as like word of mouth. That is the way we do content marketing.
I think we had one more question, a show of hands at the back. I did see a gentleman who wanted.
Hi. My question is for Daniel, and it's related to startups about the subject of reviews. So what do startups who don't have access to their own user base, what do they do for reviews? And is there another way to source it other than saying paying exorbitant fees to TripAdvisor to use their content? Is there an alternative?
That is a very good question because for startup, limited resources and no popularity in the market, it will really very challenging in the first place. So I would say it really depends on what kind of products the startup companies are selling. As what I said, if that is to the massive, tourist market, then it should be like shallow and cheap. But it should be luxurious and more high-end. Then I would say for the startups, it might not really need to use the reviews or the comments from the massive tourists. It may have some connections in the beginning already with those rich people. So I would say for the startup, we don't have money. Well, if we have money, then it shouldn't be a concern. If we don't have money, we should be really targeting the specific group of the audience that would be our potential customers, and then attack them with very good content, with connections, with word of mouth, with whatever we can to get this small bunch of people first and let them spread the information for the startup itself.
All right, we have one more question.
So I have a more general question for Lonely Planet specifically. So over time, we've noticed that people have started to want to go more to offbeat destinations, more unusual destinations that have not been as explored. But there is still a large number of Indians that does feel that discomfort in going to these places that people have not been to before, because of course, as we know, travel is based on other people's experiences, and the comfort of kind of having vegetarian food and having kind of people who have been there is always going to be there. So over time, have you noticed that this trend has kind of changed, where people are more willing to travel to these unusual destinations and move beyond their comfort zone? And I'm again talking more about the average Indian traveler. Of course, we do see a trend in solo travelers and backpackers that are influenced by influencer marketing and bloggers to go to these places. But have you noticed a change in the average Indian traveler who is more willing to kind of explore and go out of his comfort zone to travel to these more offbeat destinations?
I think it's a long question. I'll try to answer as precise as possible. First of all, we cover 95% of the world in terms of content, so that's good for us. We did an extensive research using TNS as one partner, Convo as another partner, and these people told us very clearly what the challenges the Indian travelers face when they travel overseas. So we have tweaked some of our content to suit the Indian travelers' needs in terms of what they are looking for specifically when they go abroad. And also the research shows that the Indian traveler wants to first do short haul flights, but say have gone abroad, it could be Sri Lanka, it could be Nepal, it could be Singapore. They want to test those waters first, because there is some commonality in, when you arrive there, you feel as if you're pretty much in your own country and things like that. And it's the stage 2 that they want to go to a new destination which they think is long haul. So we basically classify as short haul and long haul and how they want to tackle it. Some tourism boards think that vegetarian is an issue. For one tourism board, I want to mention the name, they just said, can you go and shout that our country has a lot more vegetarian food than non-vegetarian food, because they thought that Indians only go to destinations. That's completely incorrect. People are willing to travel and take risks as well. I'm not even using the word adventure. The last one I would say the research showed us was that Indians, when they traveled within India, they didn't plan, because they thought, my country, I know it. When I land up someplace, there is always a concierge, I can sit to them and sort it out. But when they traveled overseas, they had so many questions to ask and so many research to do that we now find, I think, most Indians takes approximately 6 holidays in a year. I mean, if that answers your question.
I'm really sorry I have to take this conversation offline because I've just got to show hands. We are running short of time. Most of our panelists are going to be over here. Bhawna has a workshop. Our friend Daniel also has a workshop. Thank you so much, Abram, for joining us. Thank you so much, Sesh. You can actually take all conversation offline. We have some wonderful lineup of sessions happening over here. We have the Facebook and the Twitter guys joining as well. Hope you guys enjoyed the session. Over to the next workshop.